Okay, boys and girls, today I'm going to be talking about how you can make a circle graph from your data. And we're going to use the information that we've learned already about how to turn a part and a whole into a percent. That's going to help us build our circle graph. So just as a quick reminder, we've talked about how to find a percent. We are going to use the Bella strategy, which is part over the total times 100 will give you your percent. If we want to find a decimal, we're just going to do the same thing, part over total, but we won't multiply times 100. That will give us our decimal version. Okay. Now, thinking back to a circle, when we think about a circle, we know that the total number of degrees in a circle is 360. So if that is the total, we can ask ourselves the question, what part of 360 will give us a certain percent? In other words, what out of 360 will make a certain portion of a pie? Okay. So we're going to use 360 as our total. And if we find a decimal or percent, we'll be able to use that to find a certain slice of our circle. And I'll show you how to do that in just a sec. Okay, so here is my imaginary data set. I've made a histogram for sample A, which I'm calling Arlington. My research question was, what is the effect of location on flavor profile? So I've got two locations, Arlington, my sample A, and Alexandria, my sample B. I have three flavor profiles. I have sour, sweet, and salty. And again, down here, sour, sweet, and salty. Notice up here in my Arlington sample, I have 8 sours, 7 sweets, and 5 salties versus my Alexandria sample where I have 10 sours, 7 sweets, and 3 salties. All right, so we're going to use that data and we're going to find a percent or a decimal of our total for each. Okay, so flipping over to the back, here is my, my data set. Notice how I've basically just turned that into a part to total fraction. So my sour up here, that's 8 parts to 20 total pieces. Sweet, 7 parts to 20 total pieces. And salty, 5 parts for 20 total pieces. Same thing down here for my Alexandria sample, except I have 10 per 20, 7 per 20, and 3 per 20. Okay, so here's how we can use this data to find a certain chunk of a circle. Okay, I'm going to do for Alexandria, and that's going to be my example circle graph. Okay, so notice how for my sour, my portion that I'm going to start with, we have 10 out of 20. Well, we already know that 10 out of 20 is 1/2, and we know 1/2 is 50%. Okay, so let me just prove that to you on a calculator. Okay, so I'm going to enter in 10, I'm using the Bella strategy, 10 divided by 20, our total, divided by 20 equals our decimal, 0.5. Okay, and that matches what we know. It's half of our sample. Now, one of the strategies that we learned is if we know our whole and we know our percent, the strategy we use is we multiply our percent as a decimal times our total, and we should be able to get a part. Okay. Now, since we are working with not a part of candy this time, but instead a part of a whole circle, what we can do is we can use this data to multiply times our new total and get a part of a circle. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so we know a circle, again, has 360 degrees. If I multiply this 0.5 times 360, it should give me exactly half of 360. Let's do that. 0.5 times 360, because there's 360 degrees total in a circle, equals 180. So I know that my first portion for my Alexandria sour, 10 out of 20 or half, is exactly 180 degrees. Let me show you how we'll draw that on our board. Okay, you'll be given a tool called a compass, and what you can do is you can attach a pencil to your compass, and you're going to set a radius. And this might not work, but that's okay. Try your best. and you're going to just kind of stick it on your paper, and you're going to kind of twirl it around, kind of like this. Oops, that's okay. I'm just going to draw a hand circle for right now. But I hope that you guys can use yours. Okay, so it's a little wonky, but the concept is still going to be the same. All right, so here's my circle. We're going to find our center point. Okay, that's the first step in this strategy. There's our center point. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just basically draw a straight line through the center point. Okay. Now, if your first pie slice is not 50% or 1/2, you're basically just going to draw one line like this. That's going to be your first step. Okay. Make a radius. All right. Now, from this radius, what you're going to do is you're going to take your protractor here. You're going to line it up with the center point. And notice how your protractor has these little lines that go out from that center point. You're going to line up, see how they're wiggling off of there? You're going to line up those little lines with your radius. Let me show you what it looks like properly. Okay, so now they're matching. They're not wiggling away. Okay, so what you're going to do then is you're going to basically find out whatever your degrees were. Okay, so you're going to use your protractor. You're going to find your number of degrees that you calculated, and then you're going to basically draw a line there. Now mine was 180, so mine is just going to basically be a straight line. Okay, so I'll draw 180 or a straight line. And that'll be my portion for sour, which is 50%. 50%. Notice here how I marked it. It's 180 degrees or 50%. Let's do our next one, sweet, which is a little bit more, it's less straightforward. So that one is 7 out of 20. So what I'll do is I'll use the Bella strategy. 7 divided by 20 equals 0.35 or 35%. Again, the strategy is multiply this times your new total, which is 360 degrees. So times 360, that's the total in the circle. And we get 126 degrees. So what we'll do now is we'll take this, we'll flip it over, and we'll use our protractor again. We'll line it up again with our center. And maybe I can move the camera down so you can see it. And what we'll do is we're going to try this time to find 120 degrees. Actually, let's flip it over this way. Again, we line it up in the center. And from this line, from the radius line that we just created, we're going to measure all the way over to 120 degrees. And we'll put a little dot there. Now notice if we go in the middle, that's 90 degrees. So we have to go past the 90 degrees to get 120. So 90 degrees, 100 degrees, 110 degrees, 120 degrees is right here. We're going to mark that. Okay. Now what you do is from your center point again, you're going to basically just mark a line from your center point. Okay. This portion here, that's the angle we've created. That's 120 degrees or 35%. We're going to shade that in. That's going to be for our sweet. Sweet, 35%. Okay, there you go. That means the last bit, 35% plus 50% is 85%. The last bit should be what's left over, which is 15%. Okay, I'll label that 15%. That's going to be for our salty. For our salty. Okay, so hopefully that answered your question of how to make a circle graph.